Guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Real Techniques sponge and comparing it to the Beauty Blender. I used to be a complete Beauty Blender fangirl and I'd use it and only it, and I thought nothing could compare, that all the cheap sponges were always crap, but the Real Techniques sponge has definitely taken over my makeup game, and I'm just going to show you some comparisons and pros and cons of both of them and show you kind of the differences in application and price and how long they last. So let's get to it. Right off the bat, let's talk about the size and shape. They are a very similar size. The Real Techniques sponge is a little bit more thick, it appears, off of the top versus the egg shape of the Beauty Blender, but they're very similar. Both sort of egg shaped, and then the Real Techniques sponge just has a cut off bottom, a little flat edge. By the way, I forgot to mention both of these are damp right now, so this is them expanded to their full size. The Beauty Blender is a lot less dense than the Real Techniques sponge. It is a lot softer and just, you can squish it down all the way, versus the Real Techniques sponge, which isn't as, it's still soft, but it's a lot more dense. It's harder to squish it down. This makes a big difference in how each product soaks up your makeup. The Beauty Blender tends to soak up a lot more product versus the Real Techniques sponge, which is denser, so it keeps a lot of the product still on the surface for your use. So there's pros and cons to that, which I will talk about a little later. So let's talk about price. The Real Techniques sponge retails for about $6 if you buy one. The Beauty Blender retails for $20 for one sponge, which sounds ridiculous for a sponge, but honestly there's nothing that compares to this. There's nothing quite like it. Even though I love the Real Techniques sponge, it's just not the same. There's no dupe. There's no exact dupe for the Beauty Blender. There's also a lot of different styles and colors of the Beauty Blender, and I'm just going to be talking about the original because that's the only one I have and have tried. There's different ones that are like called the blusher, or the naked one, which is for skincare if you want to apply your lotions and skincare with it. There's minis that are more for under eye and precise application. So there's a bunch of different options, but as far as I've heard, the original is the best one. This Beauty Blender right here is 3 months old. I've had it for 3 months and have used it for 3 months, and it's close to the end of its life. The Beauty Blenders, they say, can last you up to about 4 to 5 months, but I'd say closer to 3 or 4 because they do start ripping or breaking apart. So it all depends on how well you take care of them. You can make them last longer. So that's one pro to the price. The Real Techniques sponge lasts me about 3 weeks. I think you could probably make it a month if you really try. But let me show you guys my old Real Techniques sponge. Just a second. Here's the difference in size, by the way, when it's damp and not damp. So this is my old Real Techniques sponge. It still looks good. It still looks in good shape, but when you fill it up with water and you soak it, this flat edge, this circle right here, starts shriveling up, which means you don't get as even of a finish. So it kind of starts ruining the smoothness of your application. So you definitely can keep using like this round part of the Real Techniques sponge long after a month, but this flat edge starts to kind of deteriorate after 3 to 4 weeks. Basically, if you compare the Beauty Blender, which is 20 bucks, lasts you about 4 months, versus the Real Techniques sponge, which will last you about a month. Honestly, price-wise, it's almost better to get a Beauty Blender for 20 bucks because it'll last you longer, and in the long run, the Real Techniques sponges end up costing you more for the same amount of time, if you know what I mean. So now that we've talked about the logistics of each sponge, I'm gonna show you guys a little demo of how I applied my makeup. I'm gonna do one side with the Beauty Blender and one with the Real Techniques sponge, and just talk about any differences with application. Okay, so I'm gonna use the Beauty Blender on this side of my face and the Real Techniques sponge on this side. Just to let you guys know right away, the finished product will not really look that different. It's pretty similar, but along the way I'll tell you a little bit of the differences with application and like soaking up product and which one will make you have more full coverage and stuff like that. So for the Beauty Blender side, I usually like to just dot on my foundation because the Beauty Blender does tend to soak up product more. So you don't want to just dip it into your product because you're going to waste a lot. And I'm just using the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow foundation today. So with the Beauty Blender, as you guys have seen probably a million times in my videos, I just like to dab in the product. It gives you a really soft finish. It doesn't leave any kind of lines like some brushes could. It just really makes it look natural and more like your skin. It does soak up excess, which can be a good or bad thing. If you have too much product on, it's a good thing because it'll soak up whatever is too much for your face, which makes you avoid having a cake face, but it also means you waste a lot of product because it soaks it into itself. For the Real Techniques side, you can either do the same thing with dotting on foundation, or you can just apply it to your hand and then dip in. I like to use the flat side. Some people still use the curved side, same as the Beauty Blender. I like to use the flat side for foundation, and I like to just dip it in and pat it on my face. I feel like the Real Techniques sponge doesn't soak up as much of the product, so you can get away with just dipping it into product and pressing it on. I really like the flat edge because it's really quick application. It covers a lot of area on your face, and it's just a very even, soft finish. It basically looks the same on both sides, if we're being honest. So the end result is really similar. It just depends on the technique and kind of your budget and price range. Now for concealer, the Beauty Blender is a little bit better just because it's softer and it has that corner, which they both have the corner, but the corner is smaller on the Beauty Blender. Originally when you get it, I've kind of used it a lot, so it becomes rounder over time, but it's usually smaller and it can just fit into your under eye area a lot better because this one is more rounded and it just doesn't fit as well because this is a lot denser and it just doesn't squish down into that small area as well. Some people even use the flat edge for the concealer as well. That side fits very well underneath the eyes, but still the inner corner part, I feel like the Beauty Blender fits better on the very inner corner. There's also the different sizes of Beauty Blenders, which they have a mini one, which you can buy, and that one fits even better because it's mini and it's made to fit right in that under eye area. So that's kind of why I use both. I like to mix it up because I favor one of them over the other for different things. I like to apply foundation with the Real Techniques one and then do other stuff on my face with the Beauty Blender. So it's all about preference. It's all about what you're trying to achieve, and they're both a great product. So I'm gonna quickly finish my makeup and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so that's it for this quick little video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something new. If you guys have tried both the Real Techniques and the Beauty Blender, let me know which one you prefer because I honestly love both of them. The reason I only compared these two is because these are kind of the only good sponges I have found. All the other cheap sponges that you find in stores honestly really are crap and they're not worth spending your money on. So if you're gonna get one, either get the Real Techniques or the Beauty Blender. They're honestly both worth it and they're both great products. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave and leave me a comment and a thumbs up. I love to hear your suggestions, so if you have a request for a future video, leave that below and I'll see you guys next time.